Welcome to worship with the Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria. My name is Reverend Jennifer Innis. It is my great joy to be the minister with this congregation of people of all ages at all stages of life. This is a beloved community striving to live into its mission of embracing freedom, loving wholeheartedly, growing in mind, body, and spirit, and adding to the wholeness and the healing of the world. We are unapologetically progressive in welcoming people of all ethnicities and races, sexual orientation and gender identities, social and economic situations and abilities, and politics. We advocate for human rights and we strive to be good stewards of this one earth. In living our mission, we recognize the deep network of relationships of which we are a part. This is the ancestral home of the Peoria people. They and many other nations were here long before the first European settlers came down the Illinois River. So we take a moment, as we have been asked to do, to recognize the Peoria people for who they were and for who they are today. And they are doing wonderful things in this time. I want to thank folks for joining us in person and online. We recognize how precious it is to gather together to expand our circles of care and connection. And so we just jump in and do that. So thank you for being brave and showing up, let me just say. If you are new to us today, please help us get to know you. We have wonderful ushers, wonderful greeters. We have plenty of name tags. We love all the questions, so don't be shy, even if you are shy, because that's okay too. And let me invite folks to stay after service for some coffee and conversation in Fellowship Hall. If you're joining us on Zoom, you're welcome to have a chat there as well. And let me invite folks to turn to your respective devices wherever they are and set them to worship mode, whether buzzy or silent. We also recognize that some medical devices need to stay on, and that's okay too. We have a few notes for today. Today is our fall congregational meeting. So we were trying to phrase this as how to invite people to bring things that are easy to eat. So we went for finger food potluck. There we go. We'll see how that works. And stuff that's easy to eat and easy to clean up. So then we can have a little fellowship and then come back into the sanctuary for the congregational meeting. We have childcare available. Folks who have signed the book since before October 19th are eligible to be voting, but we want to just invite, if you want to come hang out for the congregational meeting, see how we make things happen, you all are welcome to do so. This is our meeting where we have a fall financial update, both from the operational finances as well as from the trust, which you might recognize as an endowment. And also, this is the voting piece, is that we are hearing about some social justice projects that the congregation gets to choose to commit to for the coming year. This is how we kind of are able to empower some of our members, and me, frankly, to be able to go and say, if I need to be at a press conference and need to be able to represent the congregation, it makes it a lot easier to do so. And we have some projects that kind of span a lot of different major areas right now, so I invite you to come and stay and hear about those as well. Let's see, so we have also next the food drive to benefit Pleasant Valley Middle School. We recognize that the SNAP benefits may be restarting, but people are hungry now, right now. So I want to invite folks to fill up our shopping cart with easy to grab, easy to fix, easy to eat kinds of food, the kinds of things that a child or a middle schooler might be able to fix on themselves for their own. In other words, don't overthink it, buy the Pop-Tarts. This is kind of the way to think about this, or a can of ravioli or things like that. And if you don't want to make a food donation, we also are happy to have financial donations to the Pleasant Valley Outreach, which is our weekly food distribution. If you want to see Bernie Humphrey or Susan Bope for more information, they would be happy to tell you all about it. It's a really great program. Speaking of Pleasant Valley Middle School, next Sunday after service will be our fall fundraiser for Pleasant Valley Middle School Food Outreach. It'll be our soup lunch. We have a number of folks who have already committed to make soup. I want to invite folks to come and join us, make a donation. All the funds will go directly to like the food pantries and the buying the great list of things they need in order to keep supplying foods. They send out 40 bags of food a week. 40 bags of food a week to the middle schoolers who are down just a couple of blocks from our church. And it really makes a difference for them, for the children and the youth and their families, to be able to have a meal. I mean, it's not just snacks. In this case, they really make a meal happen. And it makes a big difference for a lot of people's lives. In 2 weeks, boy, we're just all about the food today, but that's okay. In 2 weeks, this one I know because I'm the host, basically. We have our Thanksgiving dinner on November 27th on Thanksgiving Day here at the church. And I want to invite friends and family and neighbors and people you meet between now and then to come and join us for a Thanksgiving dinner. The sign-up sheet is out in the foyer. You can send a note to the church office. We need folks to help clean up. We need folks to help set up, folks to bring food, all of the above. And we start prepping at noon, we serve at 1, and it's generally a great time. We have like 30, 40 people in Fellowship Hall. It's a great meal. So please consider that, and we look forward to seeing you there. And I'll just pause one more note for the congregational meeting today is hopefully about 12:15 we start. Please sign in at the card table with the list if you're a member. So that helps us know when we have quorum and helps us keep track of who's around, who will be in the sanctuary. And I think that's it. Now we get into singing. Please join me for our opening song. We have been working on this one. It's Forget Your Perfect Offering. It's an adaptation of a Leonard Cohen piece. And so let me invite our hymn support to come and join me for this. I'm going to invite you to rise in body or spirit. I think we finally have the lyric card right on this as well. So you're going to follow me. I'm going to demonstrate and we'll get it practiced here. All right. So follow me. Forget your perfect offering. Ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. 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 Ooh, let's keep going. Forget your perfect offering. Ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. 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 Forget your perfect offering. Ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. 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 Forget your perfect offering. Ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. 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 Nice. Let me invite Wendy Innis and Nate and Abby Price to come forward for our opening words and chalice lighting. Yes, I have Mom here.
Every day is a new start. Every year, a beginning, or so we'd like to believe.
And we don't know, we can't anticipate where we will go, what will happen, what delights await, what heartbreaks will tear us open. The path's unexpected, the path opens before us.
Even knowing that we lean our lives in particular ways, focus on particular moments, incline our attention to what is in our hearts and lives and hands to offer.
We know for sure that ours is in the going, finding what is on the path and off, and in giving and creating what we can.
We come here amidst the discoveries and delights, the worries and woes, to find a moment to connection, to pause on the journey in gratitude and sorrow.
It is good to be together. And now we have the chalice lighting words from the Reverend Sam Trumbore.
O light of life, be kindled again in our hearts as we meet together this morning to celebrate the joy of human community, seeking a wholeness that extends beyond ourselves.
Thank you. During our music for meditation, all are welcome to come forward for a chance to light candles, make a small light that acknowledges what is with you and within you. If you are online, I invite you to let these candles be for you as well. Let us now enter into our music for meditation. From Frederick Gillis. Spirit of community, in which we share and find strength and common purpose. We turn our minds and hearts to one another, seeking to bring into our circle of concern all who need love and support. Those who are ill, those who are in pain, either in body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. We know we are part of a deep network of life that makes us one with all humanity and one with the universe. In that spirit, this is the moment for the sharing of our joys and sorrows. I want to offer a happy birthday to Gene Mielkowski. He turned 75 on Friday, and all are welcome. He has emphasized this. All are welcome to his birthday celebration at his studio Friday evening, and I think most of the day on Saturday. As he says, your presence is a gift, and the hours and the location for this are in our announcements. So, happy birthday to Gene. And if you don't know Gene, you might know his white pickup truck that runs around Peoria with a fantastic silver sculpture out the back. And if you're like, who is that guy? That would be Gene. All right. We offer care and healing wishes to Terry Malone. Things are becoming more clear with her cancer diagnosis, and she is in good care. She and Tom appreciate all of the support. In our larger world, this week is a window for transgender, non-binary visibility. And I want to offer that this is a moment of affirmation, that how precious it is to celebrate existence, to celebrate thriving, not just surviving, and that to do so is truly life affirming, and it makes a difference to those who are in need of hope. We also honor Transgender Day of Remembrance later this week on November 20th. And I offer a piece from my colleague, the Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. In honor of Transgender and Non-Binary Day of Remembrance on November 20th, we remember those who have been murdered for being who they are, those who face violence on a daily basis, those who have lost loved ones, and those who worry for loved ones. May we come to a time when we cease to shame children around gender roles and expression, where we allow for freedom and exploration of identity and expression, and to a world that operates from love, especially when things are difficult and confusing. May all of us who live with the threat of violence find support, strength, community, hope, and safety from violence. Let us hold one more moment of quiet. Within us and among us, there are so many names and milestones. There are joys and sorrows. Our circle expands to hold all. So I invite you to breathe with me and pause in our circle of care. Amen, salam, shalom, and blessed be. And now I invite Jesse forward for the story.
Today, I am telling a story from our Unitarian Universalist heritage. We are learning about Viola Liuzzo and how she decided to act on her beliefs. On March 21st of 1965, long, long ago, protesters sang and chanted on the 50-mile march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. This was the second try after the first protest ended in police beating and shouting and arresting protesters. On this day, though, there were thousands of marchers, and hundreds of them were Unitarian Universalists. Many people saw the televised coverage of the first march, and they heard the call from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for lovers of justice to come to Selma and join the march. One of the many who heard that call was Viola Liuzzo, a 39-year-old white woman. She went to Selma to support the cause of civil rights. Her car was in Selma too, and was very useful in picking up those who had started the march but could not finish it. After the march, Viola helped to carpool supporters to bus stations, at the airport, and train stations for their journeys home. Home for Viola was not Alabama. It was Detroit, Michigan. Viola came from a family that struggled sometimes. But as hard of time as her family had, Viola could see that the Black families in her communities struggled even more. And she wondered, what does the color of someone's skin even have to do with how hard a worker they are or how good a student they are? All of that thinking helped Viola form some strong opinions. And when Viola saw what was happening in Selma, and she heard Reverend King's call, nothing was going to stop her from doing what she knew was right. And before anyone could talk her out of it, Viola went to Selma. She held hands with Black and white people and crossed the bridge, 3 people wide. Later that night, Viola was using her car to help marchers get home. And she and Leroy Moten, a Black civil rights worker, drove along the highway. A car pulled up behind them. White supremacist men from the domestic terrorist organization, the Ku Klux Klan, began following and threatening them. Viola became frustrated. After 20 miles along a lonely, dark stretch of road, the car pulled up alongside her and shot and killed both passengers. They shot Viola because she was a white woman who was helping Black people claim their civil rights. Those men thought that by doing that, they could stop this momentum. But the civil rights movement kept rolling toward freedom. Viola's dedication to her values and her sacrifice helped all people get a little closer to freedom. That was a big sacrifice. I wonder what we should learn from Viola Liuzzo's life. I wonder how we know when it's time for us to act. And I wonder what actions are right for each of us to take. I invite all the kids and grown-ups to join me for religious education, and the rest of the congregation can sing us out.
From Jennifer Jo Von Rue. In our world, so many voices are silenced. So many truths remain unspoken because the speaker fears rejection, judgment, or worse. Our financial offerings today help sustain this congregation where voices can be heard, where truth can be spoken, where vulnerability is met with compassion. So we give in gratitude for this beloved community and with a hope for a world where more people can speak what they need to say. And we also share a portion of our gifts with the community through our Share the Plate practice. Half of the undesignated plate goes to a local group doing good work here. This month, our Share the Plate recipient is Lula NFP. Lula is a Peoria outreach that provides food and temporary shelter, clothing, sleeping bags, blankets, bus passes, and other crucial items to people who are unhoused in our community. All of the people being served have experienced trauma. Most suffer with mental illness as well and struggle to have access to what they need to take care of themselves. So Lula just does all the kinds of things to help with that. And it's an all volunteer organization as well. So I want to invite you with the envelopes in the pews or going to our QR code to make a donation for this week. If you're using the envelopes and you're making a cash donation that you want to go to your pledge, please write your name and that it is for your pledge on the envelope. We really want to make sure to keep track of that. And I want to thank folks for all of the gifts and invite the ushers to please come forward. Our reading is from the Reverend Michael Schuler, one of our retired Unitarian Universalist ministers. Let us pause now to look inward, exploring, if we dare, the secret places where motives and made and intentions live. Beneath appearances, what kind of persons are we? Is the inner self congruent with the one that rejoices with friends, assists the infirm, or comforts the crying child? No. As we take inventory and remember mistakes we have made, impure thoughts we have had, schemes we have hatched, we know that not all is right within. We are born to inconsistency, not purity, and conscience is a dubious guide that leads us stumbling along the path of virtue. We are all fallen, all self condemned, and for time after time, we have succumbed to temptation and chosen lesser gods, betraying the truth of ourselves, the truth etched indelibly on our essential being. This, then, is our estate and our inescapable humanness. Let us recognize and not deny our imperfections, forgive and not condemn ourselves. May our growing awareness of our mixed motives and morals increase our humility and make possible lives of greater sensitivity, sincerity, and serenity. So may it be. Please rise in body or spirit and join me for our hymn number 391, Voice Still and Small. That's good. That's good. So I have a question. Have you thought about your conscience lately? No? Yes? No? Like, have you thought about, like, oh, this conscience thing? I have a thing called a conscience. And not just in the way that we might do so in kind of a light way, like Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio, right? The little bouncy conscience on the shoulder. The right of conscience has been part of, I know, my Unitarian Universalist vocabulary for as long as I can remember. And I will admit that I have not given it much thought recently. I've not been intentional about what is the state of my conscience? How do I understand kind of judgment and contemplation and so on? Because, and maybe frankly, because conscience is just so much exercised in these days. Because of trying to make sense of the world, we're kind of, in the practical sense, in the execution sense of just simply making moral choices or trying to interpret the meaning of what is going on around us, we are a bit on overdrive. The moral injury of the day is an everyday process, which to me says it's all the more reason to pause and meet it and think more intentionally about conscience for a minute. Because I think it's one of those pieces as I was pondering, to me, it's part of the kind of the water in which we swim. It's this word that comes from assumptions, shared understanding. It's in our common language, both as in Unitarian Universalism, because we advocate for the right of conscience all the time, and also in our world. And the use of it, the use of conscience, the deployment of it is kind of both conscious and subconscious all at once. Kind of know where the state of our conscience is by when we, how we react to something, how quickly we react to something, and how we react. I appreciate Reverend Michael Schuler's acknowledgement that how flawed we are and how our responses to things kind of indicate a little bit the state of our conscience. And I also, in this moment, happen to like Wikipedia for their description of conscience. Conscience is a cognitive process that elicits emotion and rational associations based on an individual's moral philosophy or value system. So, conscience, according to Wikipedia, is a cognitive process that elicits emotion and rational associations based on an individual's moral philosophy or value system. And they also make the distinction that this is not about the, the, s- the systemic response we have in our central nervous system, that kind of reflex reaction. That's not this. Conscience is a little bit different. They go on. In common terms, conscience is described as leading to feelings of remorse when a person commits an act that conflicts with their moral values. The extent to which conscience informs moral judgment before an action and whether such moral judgments should or are be based on reason has occasioned debate through much of modern history. We've been talking about this for a long time with theories of basics and ethics in human life, in contrast to theories of romanticism. Got some interesting here, and reactive movements of the Middle Ages. So a lot of this is kind of Western conversation here. So conscience informs moral judgment before an action, and to varying degrees, reason is involved. I kind of appreciate the acknowledgement that reason is part of it, but not all of it, because there's also intuition and ethics and relationships and values, along with mortality and interdependence. How our conscience shows up is all wrapped up in everything that we are. In religious terms, for some traditions, conscience is connected to God or the divine or a higher power. We are called to live into the hope and expectations that for some of us that God calls us to, or are simply far larger than us, that are truly transcendent in their value, ineffable in their description. So conscience can be measured by how much we are fulfilling our divine call, if that is where your language goes. I so appreciate in the Wikipedia article, it drew from a number of different religious traditions or faith traditions, philosophy traditions. In each one, they were talking about having an understanding of conscience. One of the ones that's most important is that how conscience is about navigating good and evil. How do you make decisions that are for the good or might be harmful? Uh, how do we choose to act in this life is the basics of it. And its impact on our soul, its impact on our spirit, the results of these actions, and how we feel about ourselves afterward. And for some traditions, the religious traditions, the question of conscience also will feed into judgment after death. This is no surprise. This is part of where our kind of religious language is too. My colleague, the Reverend John Cullinan, reminds me that uh, there was a moment starting in Western culture that kind of separated conscience from religion. In that age of enlightenment in the 1700s was a radical movement in human ethics and values and science. So you had intuition and reason was separated from religion. It didn't have to be connected. It didn't need to be connected with the church to have a sense of conscience. And in the founding of this country, the leaders that were involved were very much a part of this age of enlightenment thinking. And they would have had this additional source, this understanding. They would have known about this additional understanding of conscience and that it may not necessarily have to be intertwined with religion, which partially, I think, fed into this whole freedom from religion idea that we're founded with and we are fighting to preserve today. Given the Christian context of our society, whether or not you actively connect your individual or collective understanding of conscience with religion, given the Christian context of our society, I think it's probably difficult to dismiss completely any religious influence on conscience. But it is true that many people really don't take religion into account when they decide on how to act and how to feel. This is an individual project, it is a collective project. It helps us to know how to respond, how to perceive, how to comprehend. And these are kind of grand and broad ideas, but they also come into, most of the time, they're going to come into our particular personal lives, our day to day. What happens when we wake up and we're deciding to make coffee and go about our lives? As Reverend Michael Schuler brings out, it brings out the mundane. Our exercise of conscience is really in the moment to moment. It's not in the grand gesture. Our own failings and our own falterings and our wishes to ignore that maybe we're not as good as we think we want to be. It's not good and evil and cosmic greatness, but it is in the everyday wrestling that we get to test and prove conscience again and again. As he says, as we take inventory and remember the mistakes we have made, impure thoughts we have had, schemes to hatch, we know that all is not right within. We are born to inconsistency, not purity. So, this question of conscience is this constant navigating of how we live with ourselves, if for no other purpose. I was thinking about how to kind of sort out this kind of the understanding of conscience, and I would invite you. I'm a big fan of using the order of service as for doodling. Think of conscience as a living worksheet, if you will. Think of conscience as a living worksheet and put on the page, maybe even highlight because some pretty good words in those order of service too. What are things that are most important? So let me ask the congregation, would you include that would inform your conscience? What are the things that you would include that informs how you conduct your life, how you dream, and what you aspire to? What are things that you would include in your conscience? What do you think? Yes. How do you make somebody else feel? So consideration for others. Yeah. Yes, Mary. Empathy. Okay. What else? Yes, Terry. Is it true and is it helpful? Boy, if people just paused for a minute and did that, wouldn't our world be just transformed? Is it true and is it helpful? Thank you. Justice, yes. Kindness, love. Mhm. Yes. How do you sleep at night? Right, right. What'd you do today that you might actually get a better night's sleep tonight? Yes. Yeah. Can you get up in your skin tomorrow? Yep, that's true. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I think think those can include love, it can include What are our major values? It include the care of the earth. If you think about the mission of the congregation, all of those things are part of it. And then I think the use of conscience is kind of an ever running flow chart, if you will. If this, then that. Yes, no, and so on. What matters most and what do you do about it? The holy, the family, the environment, the sacred, and more. But then there's also moments, and I think we really need to be kind of exercising and kind of checking in on the state of our conscience on a regular basis, because then we might be asked to do something big. You know, the story of Viola Liuzzo is one that keeps being shared, and it's one that's nationally recognized. It's been appreciated very much in Alabama and the civil rights movement as a whole. So Viola was a wife and a mother. She was a white woman who had her own hardships. She was managing a family, and she was witnessing the worst hardships of her neighbors, of her Black neighbors. And she was so moved that she got in her car and drove from Detroit to Selma. Viola did what she could with her resources, helped people move to and from where they needed to be, all for the sake of human rights, all for the sake of civil rights. In 2002, I joined other Unitarian Universalist ministers for a trip to Montgomery and to Selma. And part of what we did was drive the route taken by the civil rights activists, to drive the route taken for the march. We too walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, the site of so many conflicts. And we visited what is now the Civil Rights Museum in Selma. And we stopped at the memorial stone for Viola on Route 80. It is on the side of the road along a stretch that is rural, agricultural, and far from much of anything. There's not a lot between Selma and Montgomery. There was even less then. The memorial, it's a beautiful stone. You can stop, you can kind of walk to it and so on. It's well done. And it's at kind of a high point, a rise in the surrounding land. The actual location of where she was stopped and shot is on a low point of floodplain. It's like a couple of tenths of a mile down the road. It's on a floodplain. It's crowded with trees. There's nothing along. There's no land really accessible from outside of the road itself. You're just in a dark road. And it would have been very dark and very isolated that night, and it still is. Still is. We talk about Viola in part because she wasn't remarkable. She was like any of us. She was a wife and a mom. She was human. She had her quirks and her flaws. She was just one of us. She wanted to do the right thing for the sake of others and put her whole self into it. Her life wasn't easy, but she was willing. And so appreciate her motivation and her choice to simply pay attention and try to do the best because of what was mattering most. We're talking about conscience. It's not just a nice conversation and unpacking a little bit of Wikipedia. It's something where we are needing to be moving into the world with strength. How can we be stronger? Because we know what we dream of and how much we screw up along the way, how we are fully human in our aspirations. I have a piece from the Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd. So I invite you to turn on your universal translators for religious language at this moment. She speaks of God So for you, it might be higher power, it might be the universe, it might be the holy, it might be another presence for you. Reverend Nancy says, if God's name is love, that God compels us to resist the fall to sinful violence by pushing back with muscular resolve against the social structures that confine our capacity to care. A universalist God for a tragic era is not a gauzy, hymn singing force of personal devotion that draws us endlessly toward itself, but a fierce and compelling power that grips us by the collar amid our rebellious descent and calls us to choose the will to mutuality all over again, even when that choice is so risky it could utterly remake us. It is a fierce and compelling power that grips us by the collar amid our rebellious descent and calls us to choose the will to mutuality all over again, even when that choice is risky. It's so risky it could completely remake us. I was with a study group of ministers this week as we wondered together how to resist authoritarianism in our time. And we talked about violence and martyrdom. So I bring out Viola's story, not to praise her death, not to glorify her mortal sacrifice. I mean, she had kids. There was real impact on what happened to her. I bring this out to sorrow at the circumstance, to refresh a commitment to say, what can we do so this doesn't happen again? It's not the glory of death, but it is to aspire to do better, to call us on to further action, to be called, as Reverend Nancy says, forward into mutuality again and again, even when it is hard, even when it risks everything. A number of my colleagues have been on the front lines of immigration and detention conflict in Chicago. Given that this recently came up on Friday, I think I need to talk about it a little bit. You might have seen the news from Friday when a crowd of largely religious leaders were physically pushed and assaulted by local and state police. The protesters were operating from peacefulness and nonviolence. They were asking to meet with the detainees to offer spiritual support, which was the least they could do given the reports of the terrible physical conditions in the detention center. They were singing, they had locked arms, and a number of them decided to simply walk forward towards the detention center. Law enforcement forced them back, there was a whole lot of big pushing, a whole lot of big struggle. Um, Law enforcement pulled some individuals from the protesters and forced them to the ground violently and detained them. Again, peaceful, empty handed protesters. Some were arrested. And that included several of the colleagues that I was with this week. Now, the mass of protesters was a lot in that one area. They had kind of limited the gathering to, and they were singing and chanting and negotiating. They were not violent. And there's a number of videos circulating in the news and other sources if you are up to watching. These religious leaders were doing what they could on behalf of the people suffering from a lack of food, water, sanitation, medication, and access to their families and legal advice. Every participant at that protest made a choice about how close to be on those front lines, and these protests and witnessing will continue. As Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd brings out, the moment needs something strong to push back with a muscular resolve. We may not be near Chicago, but we have challenges, we have moments in front of us. So, how can we push back? How can we push ourselves to push back? This is the question we get to take up in part with some of the projects we will have the congregation vote on during the congregational meeting, in fact. So, the question of conscience. It is good and evil, it is right and wrong, it is internal, external, it is all the flow of the back and forth of how we can keep showing up, even as often as we back up and don't want to be involved. We will not be who we once were before this chapter of politics and social shift and racial reckoning, before we were becoming more aware of the impact and need for visibility for folks who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, interfaith, intersex, asexual, and questioning. We will not be the same after this chapter and its impact on the environment and our basic humanity. So let our conscience, let ourselves be changed. We need to let ourselves be changed, be impacted, be remade. And to do so in a community that comes from love, that so loves the world as we do, that we can, in fact, get over ourselves and be called to transform it in ourselves and become more whole. How shall we meet this challenge? Let us go forth. Amen. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses, from Thomas Michelson, my late colleague who was, in fact, one of our great social justice people in Cambridge. Wake Now My Senses.
We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth.
In the name of all that is holy, may the connections between us inspire and sustain us. May the flame of life within us and amongst us be a sacred reminder that all we are called to serve, to grow, and to love as we continue this journey of transformation. Our worship is ended. Let our service begin.